Herodian was born in Syria around the year 170. It is considered he had Greek origins. For some time he lived in Rome, where he wrote an impressive history worth in 8 books, dedicated to the history of Rome. Herodian passed away around 240. Regarding Herodian's writings about the subject we're covering, we will say that this ancient author also treated the Macedonians as a separate nation very clearly. And he pointed that out very precisely. We will list several examples. In the first book, chapter 3, Herodian mentions the Macedonian Ptolemaic dynasty which ruled Egypt at the time. Herodian writes the following about the king Ptolemy.
Ptolemy too, contrary to the laws of the Macedonians and the Greeks, went so far as to marry his own sister.
Actually, the members of the Ptolemaic dynasty were only made formal and not real marriages with their sisters to fit the Egyptian tradition. What is interesting in this sentence is that Herodian separated the Macedonians from the Greeks, saying that they have their own laws. Of course, he was referring to the Macedonians and the Greeks that lived in Egypt. This testimony has even bigger value because Herodian himself had Greek origins. In the third book, chapter 2, Herodian is still very clear when pointing out the specialness of the Macedonians and the Greeks. He criticizes the Greeks and says that they would always argue with each other. They were jealous of each other, and they were looking for ways to destroy anyone that succeeded in life. Because of this, he says that the Greeks fell as a nation, destroyed by their own greed and evil, so they became very easy prey for the Macedonians, and later for the Romans too. Here we read,
"This is an ancient failing of the Greeks, the constant organizing of factions against each other, and their eagerness to bring about the downfall of those who seem superior to them, have ruined Greece. Their ancient quarrels and internal feuds had made them easy prey to the Macedonians and slaves to the Romans, and this curse of jealousy and envy has been handed down to the flourishing Greek cities of our own day."
No further comment is needed here really. Herodian clearly points out the 3 different nations here: Macedonians, Romans, and Greeks. The Greeks, of course, falling under the Macedonian and later Roman domination. In the 4th book, dedicated to the Roman Emperor Caracalla, 188-217, in the 8th chapter, Herodian writes that this Roman emperor was so thrilled by the persona and work of Alexander the Great of Macedon that he proclaimed himself as the second Alexander. Here we read,
"Caracalla, after attending the matters in the garrison camps along the Danube River, went down into Thrace at the Macedonian border, and immediately he became Alexander the Great. To revive the memory of the Macedonian in every possible way, he ordered statues and paintings of his hero to be put on public display in all cities. He filled the capital, the rest of the temples, indeed all Rome, with statues and paintings designed to suggest that he was a second Alexander. At times, we saw ridiculous portraits, statues with one body which had on each side of a single head the faces of Alexander and the Emperor. Caracalla himself went about in Macedonian dress, affecting especially the broad sun hat and short boots. He enrolled picked youths in a unit which he labeled his Macedonian phalanx. Its officers bore the names of Alexander's generals.
This almost unbelievable testimony is significant in many bases. First, it speaks about the great appeal Alexander the Great had even amongst some Romans in the highest position. Let's remind ourselves that it took great effort for the Romans to conquer Macedonia. But that didn't stop some of the newer generations to admire the great Macedonian king. Furthermore, Herodian mentions a special kind of Macedonian outfit, which Caracalla dressed up in, and also gives more detail connected to the way the Macedonians dressed: special hat and short boots. We see that Caracalla rapidly started to worship Alexander after he came near Macedonia, which in his time was already 3.5 centuries under Roman reign. This means that at the time the memory of Alexander the Great of Macedon was still very strong among the Macedonians, so Caracalla took it from them. To conclude, the work of the ancient Greek historian Herodian represents another blow against today's Greek propaganda. Herodian undoubtedly treated the Macedonians as a special nation with their own culture.